We arrived in Lima on a Saturday night to find half of the 10 million residents leaving a concert on the coastal road. The next day we cycled the bike path on top of the cliffs overlooking the beaches. Amy played pickleball with some friendly locals. We ate ceviche for lunch and pushed our bikes down and then up the Bajado de Baños, full of artists, vendors, and some guys listening to reggae. In the evening, Amy visited a barter store to generate some good karma with one of her prospective clients. On Monday, we Ubered into the historic center with the main square, the cathedral, and the governor's palace. Then it was off to the Larco Museum and its enormous collection of pre-Columbian artifacts, including a gallery of erotic pottery. The last museum of the day was the Huaca Pucllana, a great pyramid made entirely of clay bricks. Its existence is a testament to the fact that Lima gets about 1 inch of rain per year. It would have turned into a muddy puddle had it been built in Seattle. On Tuesday morning we flew to Arequipa. At 7,600 feet, we figured it would be a good place to start acclimatizing for cycling in Cusco, which is at 11,000 feet. Two impressive volcanic mountains overlook the city, Chanchani to the north and El Misti to the northeast. In the afternoon we visited the Santa Catalina Monastery, which was consecrated in 1579 and home to nuns who, if their families donated enough, could sleep in private apartments. I imagine it was probably like 16th century Mean Girls. We got picked up early on Wednesday for the 4-hour drive to the Colca Canyon over the Patapampa viewpoint at almost 5,000 meters. The guide recommended chewing coca leaves for the altitude. The area was shaped by volcanoes like the Cascades, but without the smoothing effects of glaciation. Our guide tried to educate us on the differences between the herds of wild llamas, vicuñas, alpacas, and guanacos along the route, but with limited success. On the way to view the condors on Thursday morning, we stopped at Yankee to visit a Wititi courtship dance where the young men dress in skirts to avoid arousing the ire of protective parents. All the church bell towers in the valley show the effects of earthquake damage. We arrived at the Colca Canyon as the condors were starting to fly. They have wingspans of up to 10 feet. The Incas considered them the messengers between the earth and the gods. I just missed these 3 juveniles launching, but I caught one of them soaring effortlessly. On Friday, we hiked 7 miles through the Colca Canyon from Canacota to the hot springs at La Calera with our guide Anna, who pointed out the flora and fauna and filled our pockets with Andean mint, which makes delicious tea. That afternoon we drove back to Arequipa, visited an alpaca wool museum now that we were experts, and watched the sunset highlight the peaks above the city. Before flying to Cusco on Saturday evening, we visited the museum that held Juanita, a remarkably preserved Incan girl discovered on the Ampato volcano in 1995. She was sacrificed around 80 years before the Spanish invasion in 1532. On Sunday morning in Cusco, we met up with Mindy and Butch, Amy's sister and brother-in-law, and climbed up to the Incan fortress temple of Sacsayhuaman. Our guide was more entertaining than informative and suggested we use our third eye to navigate the dark. In the afternoon, we met up with our cycle group and Jose, our cycle guide for the week, and went on a walking tour of Cusco. For the entire month of June, there are festivals in the Andes to celebrate Inti Raymi, the winter solstice on the 21st. But the main celebration is on the 24th to coincide with the Catholic feast of St. John, and is an example of how the indigenous people layered their beliefs over Catholic teachings. On Monday, we toured Sacsayhuaman again and Tambo Machai, a water temple.
Hey, woman.
Sexy woman.
And then we had our first bike ride, which had just enough uphill to feel the altitude and enough downhill to learn to navigate the rough roads. On the way home from dinner that evening, we saw groups of young people practicing their dances. Our second ride was from Cusco to Pisac. In the national bread capital of Oropesa, they've been baking the round pancetta flavored with anise and honey for over 300 years. I whopped my wad by volunteering for an extra climb.
Yay! Urabamba!
We cycled down the Urubamba River past San Salvador, the kiwicha or amaranth capital of the world.
Now, there's not many people know that.
On Wednesday morning, we drove up to the imposing Pisac ruins overlooking the Sacred Valley and massive agricultural terraces, intricate imperial architecture, ceremonial baths, a sun temple, and military barracks. It was also a cemetery with graves carved directly into a nearly vertical limestone cliff. The day's ride was 42 kilometers through the Sacred Valley to the town of Urubamba. We started by sampling empanadas in Pisac, then guinea pigs in Lamay. Speaking of guinea pigs, another example of the layering of Andean and Catholic culture is a depiction of the Last Supper featuring a roasted cuy or guinea pig. We began Thursday's adventure with a visit to the weavers of Chinchero. The women were delightfully mischievous and their weaving song included references to secret lovers. It's easy to see the inspiration for some of the pottery at the Varco Museum.
Yeah, but this is baby alpaca.
And no day would be complete without some Incan stonework, this time at the site of what was the country estate of one of the Incan emperors. During their rebellion against the Spanish in 1540, the Incas burned the palace before retreating to the jungle. The Spanish later built a church on the ruins. We began our ride circling Lake Pire, which the Incas harnessed to provide water to Cusco. Our lunch stop for the day was at Lake Huapo, where our tour company has a facility. The chef cooked a meal in the Pachamanca style, using a pit and heated rocks. After lunch, we cycled through fields of ripening oats with Mount Veronica as a backdrop. Friday's tour was to Moray, where the microclimates at the top and bottom of the terraces could have a 30-degree temperature difference. Our morning ride took us through more grain fields for an early lunch back at the tour lodge. Risking gastric distress, we sampled chicha, the local corn beer, at a chicheria, marked by a red flag hanging from a building. The small town of Huaraconda is famous for a huge church built in the 1600s over the ruins of an Incan ceremonial site, and delicious roasted pork. We finished the day with a beer at the Sacred Valley tap room. On the cliffs above us were sky lodges, where for just $450 a night, you could, should the need arise after tasting all the street food, scare yourself shitless. We began our exploration on Saturday with a visit to the morass salt pans, where a natural stream of salty water is sun-dried into crystals of varying shades. At one point, our morning ride along the dirt roads through the gently rolling hills was cordoned off. Rally cars were doing a time trial. Jose managed to persuade the young police officer to let us dash 150 yards down the road to our turnoff. We were fortunate to catch one of the June parades as we rode into the town of Morass. At some point, we stopped for a portrait on some of the terraces that lined our route. It looked better in my mind's eye. We had lunch al fresco on our descent into the Sacred Valley. That evening, we stayed in Ollanta Itambo in preparation to catch the train the next morning for the hike to Machu Picchu. To get to Machu Picchu, you can take a train and a bus, or hike for 4 days, or 7 miles, or 5 miles. We did the 5-mile hike, which starts off with 1,500 feet of climb in the first half mile, and then contours around the impossibly steep mountain. The Incan trail building skills were truly impressive. Our guide told us about one of his clients going hysterically blind while doing the 7-mile hike and having to be led off the mountain. By the time we'd hiked in, I was ready for a nap, which is when the tour began. Blah, 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 stones, blah, 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 more stones, blah, 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 blah. I heard a lot and remembered a fraction. By the way, the very adventurous can apply 3 months in advance for one of the 200 tickets to Montaña Huayna Picchu, which is way up the mountain. On the bus ride down to the train station, thank you Jesus, we didn't have to hike the 5 miles and back out. Amy sat us in the front seat with an expansive view of the drops. Judging from her facial expression, she seemed to be really focused on the skill of the driver. Monday was our last day of riding. Everyone was tired after Sunday's hike, so the rides were mostly downhill with big swooping fast corners, alpine meadows, and alpacas wandering across the roads, or maybe they were llamas. I was going too fast to tell the difference. At one point we hit 38 miles per hour. It was awesome. In the morning we rode to the hot springs at Larras and had another alfresco lunch beside a clear stream. In the afternoon we did another sporty descent from almost 5,000 meters. It also was stupendous. We spent our last day in Cusco hanging out with Brian, Andrew and Martin, buying more alpaca sweaters, visiting more Inca ruins, and watching the festival. Great people, great organization, great place, and great memories.